Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Let the Right One In. Another great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I do love that interesting thing of now that Mark has gotten captured. Like, obviously, what is he seeing? He's seeing the priest he confessed everything to, like episode 7 and 8. But now it's like, yeah, that guy's like, right, you kind of had a chance to ask God for forgiveness and look at the situation you're in. But for Mark, it's like, I don't regret what I'm doing, because what parent would not do whatever it takes for their child, especially given the circumstances that they're in. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, right, you need to see your child for who she is. But once again, she isn't a child. She may look like it, but she still is a 22-year-old. And it's like, right, it's almost like your child is old enough to make her own decisions because she's an adult. You're still treating her and still looking at her through the lens of a child, when in actuality, she's an adult. And I think this episode kind of showcased that too. And it comes up that conversation of, well, what are you going to do when you're not around anymore? Like, what is she going to do? The choice is going to be hers, whether to sin or starve, because you made that decision for her. You and your wife made that decision for her 10 years ago. And I think that's why Ellie's kept going, is because Mark's never said it until like last episode when he kind of threw it in her face. Like, yeah, your mom died so you could live. But I think it's been there that entire time. Now it's like, right, your dad's already done so much. And it's just like, I think it's been such an unspoken thing for them that but you know, she's been carrying that around, and it's just, once again, it's that thing of, you can feel something 1,000-fold. You can feel, you can tell yourself something over and over again. The moment someone, doesn't even have to be someone you care about, but the moment someone points something out, that's when it cuts deeper. So all that was already there beneath the surface when it came to Ellie, but I think her dad throwing it all in her face made it cut that much deeper, because it was coming from him. Because she was like, yeah, like, I ruined my dad's life. My dad can't, like, that's why she was happy with the whole him and Naomi thing, because it's like, right, he's happy for the first time. Like, we're both happy, but now it's like, right, his happiness is so, like, he'll cast aside his happiness if it means making me human again, you know. And it's like, she doesn't want him. He's already sacrificed so much over these past 10 years. Her mom gave the ultimate sacrifice so she could live. So it's like, I don't want this to keep going, you know, because she wants this to end too. But once again, it's just like Mark's unwillingness to see her for who she is, because yes, she might be a 12-year-old, but she has the wherewithal and the understanding, because she has probably like been studying on her own these past 10 years and has been like, you know, just growing smarter and smarter. So she is basically mentally a 22-year-old, with obviously extreme circumstances. But either way, Matthew is trying to snap like Mark out. He's like, hey, I'm gonna find out what you want. He's like, I need to talk to Claire Logan, please. And you know, he does his thing, and Matthew is like, right, torture does work, because it's not as much what he said, it's his unwillingness to say what he said, because it's like, oh, you don't know this woman. It's like, okay, I know you're lying, and you say like, oh, she doesn't have any children. If you know, like, she just might. It's like, no, I already know what apartment you live. I saw your interaction with Isaiah. I know that's her son. It's like, I know you're close enough to have a relation. And it's like, right, the fact is you're unwilling to tell me what apartment's yours tells me you have somebody there that you're trying to protect. It's like either a woman or a child. So sent one of his guys, which, you know, Isaiah and Ellie were having that conversation of like, she's like, everything her dad says, she's like, no, he meant it, and he was mad at me about me telling you the truth about what I am. And ultimately, Isaiah's coming from the perspective of, yes, my dad made mistakes too, but I give anything to hear his voice one more time, because Ellie chose not to listen to the voicemail, but a guy rode up, and I was like, I know Ellie was more so doing it for Isaiah's sake, just because like she could already do something about it, but she didn't want to. I think there's some part of her that was kind of scared, like, if I go full vampire right now, I could do something, because she didn't want him to ever see that side of herself. So, but obviously she could easily overpower the dude, ended up knocking him out with the gas that her dad has. And Isaiah is looking at like the bag with like the jug and the knife, because she's like, he's like, are you going to kill him? And Eleanor was like, no. He's like, did you tell me you haven't killed anyone before? She's like, I haven't. And he looks at it back. He's like, but your dad has? And now he pieces it together. It's like, that's how you get your food. And for her, it's like, now you see the ugly side of this. All you ever see, you think it's like the cool side of things. This is the nasty, ugly side of being what I am, and why I would never like wish this upon somebody. you know? And so Eleanor had to handle things on her own, and she's hearing her dad's voicemail. And at the same time, this is all going down. Well, first and foremost, the guy's like, yo, you don't even know how to use that gun. I was like, well, she's smart enough to kind of adapt because she like cocks the gun and is like, I watched enough TV. I'm like, plus, once again, she's not a child. He's underestimating that because, I mean, that's his folly. He's thinking like, oh, this is just a child. And it's like, yeah, and even later on when they're in the car, he's like, yeah, you might slip on and, you know, drop the gun or whatever. And she grabs hold of him. She's like, I'm only holding the gun because I don't actually, even if I drop the gun, I'm like, I don't actually need it to hurt you. I'm like, yeah, she doesn't. She has a superhuman strength on her side. But it's more so because like, hey, like the gun is a visible thing to like keep you in line, but I don't even need it. That's the kind of, and that's all, I think that's also instilling a little fear. I'm like, I don't need it. I got superhuman strength and I got this gun. So it's like, yeah, like which one? I honestly, the gun is scarier than her being what she is, because her being a weapon all on her own is a scary thing. Plus, she's gone some training with Naomi too, so that doesn't help. But then he also saw her eyes. He's like, what the hell is going on with your eyes? Because the only person that's among that squad that knows the truth amongst like Matthew and his buddies is Matthew. Like that's been a close kept secret between him and Claire. The other show, like, oh, we're just doing a drug dealing thing. Claire's like the middle ground person. Like she's the scientist, but they don't know like what this is all about. Which, speaking of Claire, she's upset with Peter because it's like, right, you chose some stranger that I had you make into a vampire. You chose him over me, your sister, who is sacrificing everything. He almost killed me because of your unwillingness. Once again, they didn't really dive into it, but I'm chalking that up to a sire bond, because he was like, right, as he said that, I pointed out last episode, he is mine. Because it's like, for Claire, she doesn't realize like how much of a bond exists between a vampire and the person that the fledgling that they make. It's a bond of like, right, I made you. I feel like this, and it's animalistic where it's like there's this like, you know, almost just like a human where it's like there is some. I mean, obviously that could be a whole nature versus nurture argument about like, right, you giving birth to a child and you feeling some kind of connection to it. There is some through line there. Obviously, you know, obviously with people, there's environmental elements to it, but like an animal, let's just kind of keep it on like the vampirism is like a very like animal, like a kind of a very, obviously in this case, like a very ancient animalistic instinct that's kind of buried there. I mean, maybe the argument is it unlocks some elements of that animalistic instinct that's already in humans. The vampirism just like activates what's kind of been dormant in your genes for so long or something like that. Or maybe it just purely is the vampiric instinct and not, you know, or maybe it's a conjunction of the two. I'm getting into the nitty gritty of it, but it's just interesting to think about in that regard. But putting that aside, Claire had every right to be upset because she's like, I'm done. Because Peter's like, oh, I took him down to Latin. It's like, yeah, because you want to experiment on post-mortem and stuff. And she's like, I'm done. He's like, okay, well, if you're done, I'll bury him in the backyard or something. And like, yeah, because Peter's treating him like, yeah, my dog died or something. It's kind of that same thing, because it is, once again, Claire's not, because that's not something that's really come up before, because Peter had never made anyone before. And he's like, right, I won't let it happen again. You were right. But she's like, no, you chose him over me. I'm done. I'm done with all of this. And then Matthew calls her up because his guy had looked at, it's like, right, there's a bathtub, there's a bed, but there's also like, this guy's got all the windows like covered up. And like in that moment, Matthew, it clicked. It's like, right, Matthew knows enough of like, right, those are the same. You're looking for this drug. You want to see Claire. You got someone who stays like where like you keep the windows covered up. And it's like, he's like, why are you trying to find Claire Logan? He's like, because I know what her brother is. And in that moment, it's like, oh shit. So he goes to see Claire and he tells Claire like, right, there's another vampire. This guy, he's protecting a vampire. And it's like, right, how do you like, at first being like, almost like, how do you know? It's like, well, he's seen how Claire and their father acted when it came to protecting Peter. So it's like, right, he's seen the signs of protecting a vampire, you know? So because of now knowing there's another vampire out there, Claire is willing like, no, I gotta do this. So I gotta see what this is all about. But that's going to majorly play into some later elements, which we'll talk about. But running through the episode a little bit more, the guy is one of the person that's a part of the unit that was left with because it's something Matthew should have accounted for. That guy is, because he's not in the know about everything. So, I mean, even if he was, he'd still go after Mark the way he did, because it's like, right, I might not be able to kill you, but he tortures Mark. And once again, the priest comes to him being like, right, this is your chance to clean your soul. All you have to do is swear to the Lord you won't do it again. But he's like, I can't make that promise. He's like, I don't care if my soul is damned. In these past 10 years, I've been able to keep Ellie's soul clean. And for him, that's all that matters, as long as her soul is safe. But it's like, yeah, when you're gone, what's she going to do? She's going to have to make that decision for herself. And what are you going to do if she decides, well, I mean, you'll be gone, so you won't have any say-so in it. It'll finally be her choice after all this time. But it's like, hey, she gets cured. What's going to happen is that, well, I mean, she doesn't get cured and you're gone. She's going to have to make that choice. And what if she does start killing again? Then it's like, right, your attempt to keep her soul clean won't matter in the end. I think that's kind of the whole point. So it's like, yeah, like, because you know you're not getting out of this room alive, but he probably could have. But I do love that, like, this episode is like, you're like, oh, maybe everything could work out. Nothing works out, and it makes so much sense why it wouldn't. I don't think it ever would have worked out in the grand scheme of things, but because I was like, man, I can't wait for these conversations to happen, but they don't happen just because there are just so many other moving pieces to this. It's like, right, Matthew had to go get Claire. None of his men are really informed about everything. This guy's getting all torturous towards Mark. Maybe if Matthew was already there, maybe that whole situation wouldn't have played out the way it did, but Ellie rode up with that guy, saw what was happening to her dad. The guy tried to take the gun. Ellie snapped on the guy, broke his arm, killed the other guy. The other guy was she cleaved his head off of his shoulders. And obviously Mark is worried. And when she pulls him up, he's like, oh my God, your blood. And she's like, that's not mine. And he looks around and he sees, like, yeah, she wrecked shop. She killed the other people. And obviously they had a limited amount of time already, because she was checking earlier to see how long it was going to be until sunrise. So there was like a limit. They had to kind of get this done. At the same time this is all going down, Matthew and Claire roll up, and Matthew's telling her to turn around. And it's like, right, at any moment we could be having this conversation. But the problem is, like, right, you just kill three of you. There's, well, three, because Roland was like my number 2 guy. And it's like, yeah, he's dead. And I know you're responsible for that. But regardless of it, he sees what, he could have probably de-escalated that situation, but also Ellie wasn't in a de-escalating type of mood, because it's like, yo, you guys captured my dad and you were torturing him, which, yes, Matthew had done that, but there's also a side that's like, yeah, but he had stopped, and once again, he wanted her dad to stay alive, but it's like, right, seeing her dad in that position, like, she, you know, like, her instincts to protect her dad just kicked in, and her being what she is kicked in too, so it's just a confluence of just, like, everything going wrong at once. And, I mean, Matthew had the benefit of, like, cool, I'm gonna shoot some shots up so that sun comes in. Then, like, he starts opening the gate, and Ellie was like, I gotta go in attack mode. And he holds her down, and he starts burning her. Like, I mean, he could have done a lot more. He was just burning her hand, but, like, Mark went in, protective mode, headshot it, Matthew, and bounced. And Claire saw him putting someone in the back trunk and, like, realized what that was about. She saw his face, and then she goes in there and finds everyone dead, including Matthew. And that's the sad part. Matthew was, once again, that's the point of, you can get through hell as long as, for one, you have an exit strategy, 2, and you have someone to go through that with. Yes, she has Peter, but it's different. It's like, that's the only other person out there that knows what she's involved in, has been her helper, has sacrificed so much for her. Like, yes, she was catching feelings for him, but it's the situation of, like, right, we're bound by this darkness in our lives, and she lost that person, which, to be fair, you can make an argument, Mark did too. He lost that person he was supposed to dive into the darkness with 10 years ago. That's why this has been such a struggle. I mean, granted, you can't even make the argument, because him and Zeke went their separate ways 10 years ago, so he was going through this all alone. Yeah, he's got Zeke in his life now, but it's like, yeah, he's still going at it alone. Like, Zeke ended up kind of being that kind of temporary, because he's still trying to keep Zeke. Zeke's already kind of in this, but it's like trying to keep Zeke at a distance. I mean, that's why I think Ellie was kind of pushing for, like, no, like, Isaiah already knows I love him, he loves me. Like, the same thing, like, Naomi, like, we can trust her. It's like, yeah, but once again, that's what I think Ellie is underestimating. You're asking Naomi to choose between you and what you are versus everything that you've ever done. And also knowing like eventually she's going to piece it together. And the question is, will Isaiah piece it together about what Mark did to his dad? So that's going to be a whole conversation within itself. So, it says, I am bringing up Naomi. She thought she was going to get reprimanded for the way she handled the whole Claire situation last episode. In fact, Interpol is involved because obviously we're dealing with death across international borders and stuff like that. Murders, in fact. And so the moment like the prints from the AA coin were like put into the system, it triggered, Interpol to interact because they have the bigger picture. This isn't just a New York thing because Mark's prints are on related to 2 murders in Canada. And those are the only ones they know about. Now, part of me, because my thing last episode, it was like episode 7, I thought because of the coin thing, I knew there were prints found on it. I was like, I thought this would connect to Mark's first murder 10 years ago. I was thinking like, right, this is him 10 years ago. He hasn't perfected his thing. Like he might have gotten sloppy, but he probably knew enough to clean up stuff because of like her medical experience. Well, she knew probably the most effective way to get the blood, obviously. But maybe like she still had enough knowledge to know what police will look for when it comes to evidence and stuff like that. So maybe she told Mark what he needed to do to clear up some evidence. Cause like the fact is you would think, well, cause it still might cause like there might be you would think that would trigger something, consider it was like in New York even if it was just 10 years ago, you figure it would connect back to that in some shape or form. Not less that murder from 10 years ago was in, but I'm like, no, it had to be close enough distance because he had like the blood needed to be taken to Ellie within a certain amount of time, right? So there's that. So it's like, I doubt that was a Canada thing. Especially considering he would have to drive. So it had to be like relative distance to them in New York. So that has to be that. I wonder if were those like more recent murders in the sense of after that, more recent as in like 10 years ago, more recent as in like those were some of the earlier murders, because the fact is it popped off the Canadian murders and not any other murders out there in the world obviously like maybe because it's just like Canada and US are close enough that their systems like would pop that no other thing would pop. Might just be because once again Mark got better, so those might have been early sloppy murders too. We don't know what the circumstances are. We do know that Mark has tried to keep up his thing of going after bad people. Obviously there have been exceptions. It's like, well, Roland wasn't necessarily a bad guy, but it was a circumstance situation. The same thing for Isaiah's dad. It was a circumstance situation. He was just like, right, at that point, Ellie needed food, and he needed to do whatever he could to get food, and an opportunity presented itself type of thing. So that's where things kind of went with Isaiah's dad, Frank, I believe. It's been a while, but I think that was his name. Either way. So... And I guess, like, he hasn't left, it doesn't matter if he left DNA or anything, they have nothing to compare it to. So I guess that kind of showcases, like, at all. He's been probably a good Catholic boy, so he probably hasn't done anything bad his entire life. Maybe not. But at the very least, nothing that ever warranted him getting arrested for his DNA to be in a system. Well, not just his DNA, obviously, like, when you get arrested, you're fingerprinted too, so his prints would be in the system too. So the fact is, it never popped early on must mean he never got arrested. Like, not even just before all the murdering stuff, like, even beforehand. So there is no direct connection to Mark, unless there's something that Mark specifically touched that Naomi ends up running the fingerprints against and then finding a match. Then she'll piece it together, but she'd have to like run something that's connected to Mark first. Like whether, that's the only way she's going to be able to know for sure it's Mark, because there doesn't seem like anything is in the system about him to kind of connect the fingerprints from the coin or those 2 murders in Canada to him. So they're working on that. Obviously, she's keeping Ben at a distance because she's going out on a limb on this situation. For her, it's like, I need to get this done for Isaiah's sake, for my own sake about, for one, stopping what seems to be a serial killer who's draining people of their blood, but also like getting like some form of closure from me and Isaiah about his dad. So So she wants to keep Ben at a distance while she does this. And he's like, don't do anything stupid. And she's like, I'm a lot of things, but she's like, I'm not stupid. I'm like, oh God, like, I think she's going to do something wild. We'll have to wait and see. But, yeah. In the aftermath of it all, Ellie and her, dad are going to have to leave because it's like, right, we left. We didn't have time to clean up the crime scene. There's plenty of evidence left behind. That's also the thing too. Like, I don't know if Claire is going to try and take advantage of that situation because it lead to too many questions about what her involvement is and all of that. So she probably can't report the whole Matthew thing without. I mean, that still could be part of the plan. But now that could be the thing that, well, once again, it's like, yeah, there's evidence there that would tie it, but once again, nothing that would tie directly to Mark necessarily. So we'll see. I'll kind of get into it a little bit later on what I think we're dealing with heading into the season finale. But they have to leave. And obviously she's like, you can't look at me. Are you that ashamed of me? He's like, no, I'm ashamed of myself. Like, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have been in that position in the first place. You wouldn't have had to do what you did. He's like, everything that I've ever done is on me. That is not your fault. Never think that. But she's like, yes, I did what I did to save you. And he's like, all right, we'll stop by the church and you'll kind of confess to the priest. He knows everything. It's like, you told a priest, but you got mad at me for telling Isaiah. It's like, right, he's bound by confession. Like, he can't say anything to anybody. So you can confess to what you did, and then your soul will be clean. She's like, but what if I don't want my soul to be clean? He's like, you don't mean that. Because that's been the driving force. At least he had some closure, being like, right, Ellie's never had to murder anyone. Now for him, he blames himself even more because it's like, right, I put Ellie in a position where she had to murder people to protect me. I'm the one that's supposed to get my hands dirty, not her. But for Ellie, it's like, no, I would do it again in a heartbeat because I saved your life. Because of what I am, I was able to save you. If I wasn't, like, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did. I was able to do what I did because I'm not human. So now they kind of have to say goodbye, because especially for Mark, like, regardless of it, he hasn't connected with anyone like that since his wife died, since Elizabeth died. And I think for him, it's like, regardless of, yes, he was pumping her, he was like, once again, all the information he got last episode, he wasn't pumping her for that. She just told him, and it's just like, right, he got all the answers he needed, but he wasn't actively going out of his way. In fact, he wanted to, like, hey, let's just not talk about it, because he wanted to kind of just spend time with her because he likes Naomi. It's like, right, we're both parents, and I think it does come back to that conversation last episode too, of like, we've got to put the children first. And in this case, Mark's putting his daughter first. It's like, right, and he's doing what's best for everyone in this situation. So Ellie has to say goodbye to Isaiah, because it's like, right, I don't want you to have to, like, deal with, like, all of what I am. I can't protect you. I won't be able to keep you safe. And I don't want you mixed up in all this, because, like, you had a gun pointed in your face. Like, you shouldn't have even been in that situation, but you were because of me. You'll never be safe around me. So we can never talk. We have to lose all contact. And for him, it's like, I love you. And she's like, I love you too, And it is like that sweet, almost like Romeo and Juliet, young love type of situation. And once again, and I think because they are so young, it's hard to distinguish whether that's like a full-blown, like, no, like, I am, like, whether that's romantic, whether that's like friendly, familial in that regard. I mean, for them, it might just kind of all be wrapped up in one. It's like, right, you just, like, you care so strongly about another human being. That's all there is to it. Like, what it kind of means in the grand scheme of things is kind of irrelevant, because, like, you feel this deep connection with someone, and whatever form of love it is, it's still love, and that's kind of what matters. And it's just like, right, after all this time, because Mark said the line of, I thought this time would be different for Ellie. It's like, it is different. Like, the fact is, even if it was just for a little while, she's like, I figured, I on some level, I knew it couldn't last forever. But she's asking Isaiah to grow up, get older, forget about me, and live a normal life. But for him, it's like, I don't want a normal life, because he's like, I know that regardless of what you are, you saved me. Because when they had that guy captured earlier, he told her, like, I know you broke Adele's, like, finger. You did that for me, because if it wasn't for you, he would have kept hurting me. And I know I owe that to you. He hadn't talked to her about it before now, but he's like, I know that's what had to have happened. So And it's like, right, you've made my life better. Normal sucks. Like, my life has been better with you in it. And you aren't normal. And so, normal's so overrated. Normal's terrible if it means I don't get to have you in my life type of thing. And it's really, it's sweet and sad that they both made, I mean, and even, like I said, Mark telling Naomi he has to go, that this might be it. Like, even he felt bad because, well, he knows about the Ellie and Isaiah thing, but I think there's also a little bit of a, like, regardless of it all, it does suck that you're a homicide detective, but it's like, because I liked you. And I think maybe on some level, I mean, Ellie was hoping that he could be that person, like, for her dad, where it's like, hey, this, you could tell her she could be that person we could walk into the darkness with, you know? You don't have to carry it on your own. Once again, Claire had Matthew, so, which, that kind of ties back to, hey, Matthew's dead, I need you to do exactly what I'm telling you to do. And then at the very end, she rolls up and she shows up at Mark's place. She's like, you were looking for me? It's not going to go down the way they thought it was. And this is where I talked about, like, the beautiful tragedy of this all. Like, right, we are both people in the exact same situation, but now, because of the way this episode fell out, the way this episode played out, it's now going to be you or me. Because everyone's made sacrifices. Like, hey, Matthew made sacrifices so that you could still live, Peter, so that you could have a chance. And so, once again, it's a very neat parallel to Elizabeth making that sacrifice to do the same thing for Ellie, and everything Mark's done to make that sacrifice for Ellie, the same thing that Claire's done for Peter. These are two parallels to each other that are now on a collision course, because now for Claire, it's like, no, I'm not gonna, like, you are gonna help us. Because that's what this is. It's drawing Ellie in. Because, like, right, Peter doesn't have to make another vampire. There's another vampire out there who's been a vampire longer, who you get to experiment on. So I think when it's all said and done, I think Claire and Peter are not going to survive this situation. And maybe Mark won't either. That might be the end result here. Maybe not. But I get the feeling like Claire and Peter are going to die in this. I don't think they're going to survive this, you know? And I think that's going to be the tragedy of this situation. And obviously, Naomi's coming back home with the files and stuff, and this is all happening. But I'm like, I don't think this ain't going to have the happy ending. Like, oh, we're in this together, we'll work this out. It's like, no, Claire's kind of in the mood for revenge, because it's like, right, I get to help out my brother, but also I get to make you pay for what you did to the person that was by my side. It's like, yes, but it's also like, right, you're someone that's willing to do whatever it takes for the sake of protecting a person. They're just two people they're putting the people they care about first and foremost. In her case, I'm putting Peter first. And for his case, it's like, hey, I'm putting Eleanor first. And it's like, right, they both want the same thing, but we're both not going to get what we want. I'm going to make you think you're going to get it, but I think, because, like, Mark's going to know, like, right, I hurt some of your people, so he doesn't know how close she was to Matthew. If he did, he would know, like, okay, I need to be wary. He already is, but she's probably going to lure him in and be like, hey, let's do this together. And I think that's why she was telling Peter, like, hey, like, either she's going to get Mark removed from the equation by getting him arrested or whatever for what he did, and they're going to keep Eleanor, and that's going to be a whole thing. Or it's like, right, you're going to have to co-sign this. Like, this person I'm going to bring in, like, she probably already figured it might have been like a little girl or something, but now she knows for sure. It's like, right, we're going to have to do this. Like, you can't betray me again. And it's like, right, Pete, this is someone even younger than you, technically speaking. I mean, even truth be told is like, yeah, they're still like 3 years apart, because he's 15, she was 12. So he's 25, she's 22. It's like, it's still going to be that thing of, I'm going to need you to ride with me no matter what it takes. So I don't think this is going to have the happy ending. I did not watch the preview. I'm just basing this on that ending and just where Claire is mentally with all of this. It's not going to be the, oh, like, kumbaya, let's work together type of thing. It's like, no, it's going to get nasty. And I just don't think Claire or Peter's going to survive it, because I think Ellie might end up killing them, and maybe Mark either dies or takes the fall for this. I just don't think it's all going to work out, because Mark might not have any choice but to kill them he might not have a choice but to kill Claire for the sake of protecting Ellie, because she'll try and experiment on Ellie, and Peter might get in the way and might end up killing Mark in the process, and Ellie has to kill him, and she might end up walking away from this situation alone. She has Zeke, but even then, it's not the same, obviously. Losing both of her parents because of all of this will be, who knows what that'll do to Eleanor in the end. So I'm very, very excited to see what happens in the season finale, whether or not any of what I'm predicting will go down or not, like how this will all play out. We'll ultimately have to wait and see. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.